In today's lesson, we will discuss a truly extraordinary chemical compound. It has unusual properties that make it unlike any other substance on this planet. In fact, this chemical compound, with its unique properties, is absolutely essential for life. Without this particular chemical, life on planet Earth as we know it simply would not exist. What is this extraordinary, unusual, bizarre chemical compound? It's water. Most of us are not accustomed to even thinking about water as if it were a chemical, but it is. It's a chemical compound. And certainly we don't think of water as being extraordinary. It seems so common to us. But as you're going to see, water has 4 unusual and important properties which make it essential for life. So as we go through and discuss each of these 4 properties, make sure for each property of water you can do 3 things. Number 1, you need to be able to state the name of the property, and some of these property names are kind of long and wordy, so I apologize for that. Number 2, you need to be able to describe and explain the property, including examples that I will talk you through, as well as any important vocabulary that's associated with the property. And finally, you need to be able to state the biological significance of the property. In other words, why does this property of water matter to life on Earth? How are plants and animals and other organisms affected by this particular property? That's what we mean by biological significance. So let's begin by remembering how water molecules form. Remember, each water molecule is made up of 2 hydrogen atoms bonded to 1 oxygen atom. And because these are polar covalent bonds, because the sharing of electrons between the oxygen and the hydrogen is an unequal sharing, the hydrogen atoms have a slight positive charge, and the oxygen has a slight negative charge. Let me get my pointer here. So here's our slight positive charge on hydrogen, slightly negative charge on oxygen. That means the water molecule itself is a polar molecule. And that means when there are multiple water molecules, like in a drop of water, for example, in between the water molecules, there will be hydrogen bonding. We'll have that weak attraction that causes the water molecules to cling together in a kind of unusual way. Now, speaking of water molecules clinging together, you see what the result is. When we have a drop of water on the surface of this leaf, the water molecules are clinging together to form this round, dome-shaped droplet. And in fact, all 4 properties of water that we are going to discuss have something to do with this hydrogen bonding. If it wasn't for the slightly positive and slightly negative charges on water molecules, these 4 essential properties of water would simply not exist. So let's go ahead and talk about, or start talking about these properties. So just to introduce this, it says the polar nature of water molecules provides water with several important properties which make it absolutely essential for life on planet Earth. Here is the first property of water. Water molecules are attracted to each other, and they are attracted to other polar molecules. Now, that's kind of a long property. It's kind of wordy. But basically what that means is water molecules tend to stick to each other, and water molecules tend to stick to other substances as well. So whenever we talk about this tendency for water molecules to stick, two terms immediately come to mind. These are important vocabulary terms that you need to know: cohesion and also adhesion. So let's make sure you understand the difference. Cohesion is the tendency for water molecules to stick or hydrogen bond to other water molecules. So this is water molecules hydrogen bonding with other water molecules. That's cohesion. And cohesion creates a phenomenon known as surface tension. So if we are looking at the surface of a lake or a pond, all the water molecules along the top surface of that lake are attracted to each other. They're clinging together because of the hydrogen bonding, and that creates enough tension that low density organisms like this insect, this is called a water strider, can actually walk across the surface of that water without breaking through those hydrogen bonds, without breaking the surface of that water. And we call that phenomenon surface tension. Make sure you know that surface tension is created by cohesion of water molecules. The other word that I mentioned that has to do with water sticking is called adhesion. Make sure you know the difference between cohesion and adhesion. Cohesion is water sticking to water. Adhesion is the tendency of unlike polar molecules to cling together. In other words, adhesion would be water sticking to other substances. So here's a good example. This photograph is a glass cylinder. It's called a graduated cylinder, and it's used to measure the volume of liquid. So some water has been poured into this graduated cylinder, and if you look on the side, it looks like there's almost 21 milliliters of water. It looks like it's maybe 20.9 milliliters. But right in the middle, right here, notice there's a dip. The water level is not straight across. It has a dip. That dip is called the meniscus. And so this is where you're actually supposed to read the volume. The correct reading on this would be 20.7. I think this would be 0.9, 0.8. Yeah, so 20.7 milliliters. That's where you're supposed to read it. But my point is simply this. The reason there's a dip, the reason we have a meniscus, is because any place where the water is touching the glass on the side, there's going to be some adhesion. And gravity can't pull that water down. But in the middle here, where the water molecules are not touching the glass, there's no adhesion. So gravity can pull that water down a little bit further. Cohesion, water sticking to water. Adhesion is water sticking to other substances, such as the side of the graduated cylinder. Now, why does this matter to living organisms? Well, first of all, it matters a lot to plants. Every land plant, what we call vascular land plants, plants that have roots and stems and leaves, which is most every plant on Earth, could not survive without this property of water. So what I've drawn here, in case you can't tell, because I'm not a great artist, this is supposed to be a tree. These are the leaves of the tree up here, and of course the trunk of the tree, and down here would be the roots. Inside the stem of every plant, there are millions of microscopic tubes called xylem tubes. So I'm showing this as if this is a large pipe running down the stem of the tree. In fact, this is a very tiny microscopic tube called a xylem tube. But notice inside the xylem there are many, many, many water molecules. There would truly be millions of water molecules. inside this xylem tube, and the tube runs from the tip of the leaf all the way down to the tip of a root down in the soil. Well, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but it's pretty extraordinary that a large oak tree, a 50-foot tall oak tree, can move water from the soil into the roots, up the stem, against gravity, 50 feet straight up into the air, all the way to the leaves. And plants have to be able to do this, to move water against gravity without any kind of a pump, without any kind of a pumping system. And so how does this work? Well, it's the combination of cohesion and adhesion. And so inside the xylem tube, this water molecule is attracted to this water molecule. Let me go back and get my laser pointer here. So this water molecule is attracted to this water molecule, which is attracted to this water molecule, which is attracted to this one and this one and this one. Of course, that would be what kind of adhesion? Water sticking to water. That's right, it's cohesion, water sticking to water. And so it's almost like a train, where the engine of the train is connected to the first car, which is connected to the second car, which is connected to the third car, and so forth, all the way down here to the caboose. At the same time, each water molecule is also attracted to the sides of the xylem tube. The water molecule is hydrogen bonded to the side of the tube. That would be adhesion. So adhesion is preventing gravity from being able to pull the water down. Cohesion is allowing these water molecules to be sort of connected to each other by hydrogen bonds. And what happens up here at the very top, up here in the leaves, when the sun shines on the leaf, when the breeze blows across the leaf, you have evaporation of water. It's a phenomenon called transpiration. When water evaporates from a leaf into the atmosphere, that's called transpiration. Well, think about it. If this water molecule evaporates and moves out into the atmosphere out here, what's that going to do to the next water molecule? It's going to pull it up. And if that one gets pulled up, what's going to happen to the one behind it? It's going to get pulled up. And the next one's going to get pulled up. And they're going to get pulled in a row upward because of that evaporative water loss at the top. So this phenomenon of water moving up the stem of a plant against gravity using cohesion and adhesion is called capillarity. And that is the biological significance for this first property of water. Capillarity allows plants to achieve vertical growth. It allows the plant to grow up tall because it allows water to move up the stem from the roots all the way to the leaves inside those xylem tubes. Now I've got a quick little animation that I'm hoping I can get to play, and it kind of explains this a little bit better. So sit tight and watch this. It's just a couple minutes long. Let's see. And of course it's not cooperating.
How do water and minerals get to the leaves? Although roots can exert a slight upward pressure, it is evaporation of water from leaves, a process called transpiration.
If anyone would like a Chick-fil-A sandwich, we have Chick-fil-A sandwich.
Transpiration exerts a pull that is relayed downward along a string of water molecules from leaf to root. Hydrogen bonds cause water molecules to stick together, a phenomenon called cohesion. As each water molecule evaporates, it pulls on the next water molecule, and it pulls on the next. This relays the pull of evaporating water molecules all the way down to the roots. The adhesion of water to walls of the xylem cells helps to keep gravity from pulling the water molecules back down. As each water molecule escapes from the leaf, it pulls a column of water molecules upward. Solutes are transported along with the water. Thus, the plant xylem uses the movement of evaporating water molecules, cohesion, and adhesion to draw water and dissolved minerals from the soil into its roots and upward to its leaves. Hot, dry, windy conditions increase transpiration. If not enough water moves up from the soil to replace the water lost to evaporation, the plant will wilt and it could die.
Okay, let's move on now to our second important property of water. The second property of water, and by the way, I'm listing these in no particular order. It doesn't matter which order we talk about the properties. They're all equally important. The second property says that water is an effective solvent. Water as a solvent can dissolve more different types of chemical substances than any other solvent known to man, including the strongest acids ever invented. So water is extraordinary in its ability to dissolve other substances. You may have even heard someone say, maybe a science teacher has said to you before, that water is the universal solvent. Well, that's overstating it a little bit, because when you say water is the universal solvent, you're suggesting that water can dissolve all substances. There's nothing water cannot dissolve, and that's not true. But water is capable of dissolving a great many things. In fact, water can dissolve anything that is hydrophilic. Hydrophilic literally translates water-loving. Hydrophilic substances are usually substances that have at least a slight positive or negative charge. So they're either going to be polar, like sugar molecules, or ionic, like salt. Remember that salt is, at least table salt, is NaCl. It's sodium with a positive charge, chloride with a negative charge. So any substance that has electrical charge, like salt or sugar, is going to be attracted to water. It's going to mix well with water, and therefore it will dissolve. Water is unable to dissolve any substance that is hydrophobic. Hydrophobic literally translates water-fearing. These are substances that do not mix well with water. They cannot dissolve in water. Those are things like fats and oils and waxes. So a couple of images here. In the middle of this picture, where you see the little white circles and red circles and the black shapes, this whole thing is one molecule of sugar. It's a sugar called glucose. And the little white parts of the sugar, those are hydrogen atoms. Those are slightly positively charged. And so those are going to be attracted to the negative charges on the water molecule. These are the water molecules. They look like little decapitated Mickey Mouse heads. At least that's what they look like to me. So the negative part of the water is attracted to the positive part of the sugar. So these are hydrogen bonds where the water molecules are pulling on that sugar molecule, separating it from all the other sugar molecules. And that's why if you put a little bit of sugar in your tea or in a glass of water and stir it up, it seems like the sugar disappears. It's because the water molecules are pulling the sugar molecules apart due to this hydrogen bonding or this pulling effect that the water has on the sugar. Here's an even better example. So here's where somebody threw in a crystal of salt, like a big chunk of table salt, into a beaker of water. That entire chunk of salt is made up of positive sodium ions and negative chloride ions. So as soon as you throw that into water, here's all the water molecules. Remember the little decapitated Mickey Mouse heads? Those are the water molecules. They are going to surround those sodium and chloride ions and force them to separate. because the negative part of the water is going to be attracted to the positive sodium ion, and the little positive hydrogens on the waters are going to surround and be attracted to the negative chloride. So what does that mean? It means that the water molecules are going to pull those salt ions apart, so that that crystal of salt is going to seem to disappear, and it's going to be scattered throughout the water. And that's why salt dissolves so easily in water. So water is a very effective solvent. Why is water such a good solvent? Because water molecules have slight positive and slight negative charges, which allows them to be attracted to, it allows them to pull on polar and ionic compounds like sugars and salts. And so why does this matter? Biologically, what is the significance of this? Water allows living organisms like plants and animals and us to dissolve and transport essential nutrients. If water was not an effective solvent, then all the nutrients from your food, after you digest your food in your stomach and in your intestines, all the nutrients would just stay there. They would never be able to travel throughout the body. But because water is a good solvent, the water part of your blood, which is called blood plasma, is able to pick up those nutrients from your intestines, dissolve them, and then transport them throughout the body. As your heart beats and the blood moves throughout your body, nutrients can be transported and delivered to all the cells of your body. Likewise, when water moves up the stem of a plant, it also carries nutrients from the soil, because the water can dissolve those nutrients and carry those nutrients up the stem. So this is such an important property. Another little side note, all important chemical reactions that happen inside your cells take place in water. So if it was not for this property of water, most of the chemical reactions in your body would not work. But the main biological significance of this property number 2 is that water allows living organisms to dissolve and transport essential nutrients. So I'm going to stop here so that this lesson doesn't get too long. We still have 2 properties of water to learn about. I will discuss those in a separate recording. I hope you have a fantastic day.